I'm using some coconut oil. It was solid. It had been slightly refrigerated, so it's cold. I'm holding it in my hand to warm it, and it will slowly start to drip and melt. As I get a drip at a time, I'll usually go in a clockwise direction. I'm close enough into the navel that I don't want it sliding around and getting onto the sheets. Just feels nice, almost like a ritual, doing some belly work. This is intimate for people. Some people have never had this work, so I tend to go slow at first, just take my time. Having the oil at room temperature or body temperature where it melts feels more comfortable. You can see it running around, almost down and around. Trying to melt that one last little bit. Again, around in a circle. And finally, making contact. I'm going to work some around the sides as well, above the hips and around the rib cage. Just smoothing it out. You're going to start off with a little bit more than you need. The little blob that I had was probably just about as large as my thumbnail when I started. This will slowly absorb. And again, I can reach around the sides. You're getting into QL, stuff around the hips. When we're working the belly, we're not just working the belly. We're not just working rectus abdominis. You also get to a point where you're lightly working on organs. You slowly take a clockwise motion, big, broad palm around the navel. I'm told that you go clockwise because digestion, the large intestine, goes from the ascending in this direction, then transverse, meaning across, and descending colon. You go in a clockwise direction. I've had people jokingly tell me that if someone had problems with diarrhea, you would work the digestive tract in reverse. And I say, if someone has diarrhea, I'm not working on their belly. I value my sheets and my table. So, light, broad strokes around, just establishing contact, broad, nurturing touch. If you have problems with constipation, this is something that's good to do to yourself. If you feel uncomfortable with someone else touching your belly, oil up your belly. Lie down, you can put your knees up. You're able to slightly work through some of this tissue. She's a very good breather. If you work with someone who's holding their breath, just encourage them to breathe. I've done some broad strokes. We've smoothed out all of the oil. I'm going to start just above the navel. Very light. I'm making contact with skin. Rolling around the belly. Low and slow. Engaging the tissue. You're thinking about pulling skin, tractioning and moving around the belly, the navel, around rectus abdominis. These initial strokes are to soften rectus abdominis, the obliques, so that we can eventually have an effect on the large intestine, small intestine. Some people even say the kidneys, the ovaries, the uterus, fallopian tubes, as you're down towards the pubic bone. Can make contact however is needed, low and slow. You can see that some of the coconut oil has started to absorb into the skin. I like using coconut for this because it's edible. It absorbs into the skin easily, and it provides enough of a lubricating capacity to be able to slide. I don't really want something that has a huge amount of grip for this. This is the one area I almost always use coconut oil. If I'm using Creamer Glide somewhere else, I tend to use shea butter because it has a little bit more viscosity, a little bit more grip. You can see I'm slowly working around in circles. It gives her a chance to get used to the quality of my touch and promotes safety. She feels relaxed, calm. There's nothing rapid or forced about the abdominal work. Round in a circle, working through tissue. What's the connection between skin, fascia, muscle, organs, nerves? There's a philosophical question there, but it's also a matter of structural organization in the body. When you're working on anyone doing massage, you're affecting nerves. You're affecting their brain, their spinal cord. You're maintaining contact with skin. Slowly the circles become larger, working your way around slowly. And you keep going until you reach the border of the rib cage and around the pelvis. Gives them time to breathe, relax, and release. As we start to get into tissue a little bit more deeply, it's not uncommon for people to feel referred pain over a large portion of their body. It's something you'll grow extremely comfortable with if you develop a belly practice. Small intestine is down low. Ascending colon. Liver, I believe, is up on this side, underneath the ribs there. Stomach is up high. Transverse colon. And then descending. If you don't know the organs, it's not an issue. Just like the rest of the work we do, you're just working with tissue. If it's too much pressure, the receiver will let you know, and you can back off. Otherwise, low and slow. So you're working around the belly. If the receiver coughs or laughs, has some response, they contract momentarily, you still go at the same slow pace. Just working my way along, right around. Now, I've worked my way around the rib cage with those small finger strokes. I'm going back in a little bit more deeply. The superficial tissue has been softened to a point. I'm using the palm to just slide around. I'm going to hook down low with the heel of my palm and slide slowly up, all within a range that she can comfortably accept. I got a little belly grumble there, totally common, expected. As Missy and I were chatting, she mentioned that she had had endometriosis at one point. when I got over a little bit of scar tissue right over here, it's a little sensitive to her. That was exactly what she did before. So I'm going to slowly go into this area. When I talk about scar tissue, I mean that there's just a little bit of a visible scar right there. But I'm slowly working around this tissue, making it maybe a bit more pliable. And if that's ever too much pressure, just let me know. I'm going to slowly get my other hand involved. So we had this bit of scar tissue. When I say scar tissue, I mean superficial. I assume something had happened here, surgery. When we had a conversation about it, she'd had endometriosis years ago. When I put a little pressure through here, it was tender. I'm gonna double up my fingers just to slide gently, again, gently, through here. Now we went one direction. I'm going to go back the opposite. And then lateral. And then medial. So, no problems. I'm feeling what's going on with the tissue here. So she has a response. She's contracting because it's tender. Is that ticklish? A little bit ticklish? Okay. So I want to go in and work around this. I'm just making sure she feels comfortable first. I'm pushing the fingers together and I'm just going to lightly press into here. I'm going to make small circles right here. How's that?
It doesn't hurt, but everything you're touching over there feels really uncomfortable.
Okay. Now, when you say it feels uncomfortable, is that something I need to stop or is it just unknown?
I think it's just unknown.
Okay.
But I'm close to asking you to stop.
Okay. So I'm not going to apply any more pressure than I'm already applying. I just want you to breathe. I'm not going to push into that. If you decide that you want more, you just give me a little more exhale. Totally fine. Not going to apply anymore. And you would just hang out and breathe. After this breath, I'm going to slightly change position, find a slightly different spot. As she's taking an in-breath, I back out. And the important thing to remember here is we are working on the belly. We are working on muscle, but we're also working the tissue underneath. She had an incision there. The tissue had to seal in some way. We don't know exactly what effect it had on nerves through the area. I'm trying to make sure she's comfortable. She felt mild discomfort, but you have to keep in mind when you're doing this, most people are not used to receiving belly work. If you worked on my belly, if I showed her how to do this, when I have this work done, I often cry because I have an emotional release because I don't receive a lot of touch to my abdomen. It's a very gentle, nurturing, soft area. Doesn't have a lot of protection. I've gone back to broad strokes, sliding through here. She seems much more comfortable, calm with that. I'm going to hook again around the transverse. I think it's the transverse obliques. I can't remember the name. Just wraps around the side there. Now, using one hand, I'm going to gently.
The one finger feels
Too much? Okay. Slight, gentle back off. She's just letting me know I'm never going to force. You prefer one spot as opposed to movement?
just like it's too narrow.
Okay.
On this part.
So she doesn't like the narrow. I think she's saying it's too pointed. I'm going to switch. Here's what happens. Broad.
That's way better.
Okay. Everyone will respond slightly differently. But in the process of working through some of this, I'm allowing her to communicate with me. That process of allowing her to communicate with me is what's going to make this work. I'm going to slowly work my way around with this soft fist for another pass. Again, clockwise. She's had tenderness on this right side. I'm going to go into the left, and I want to see if there's any similarity. I'm going to go just a little bit back and forth. My belly sessions that I call belly reboot are usually an hour and a half long, primarily just on the belly, the abdomen. Now, doubling up the fingers, she thought the other was too pointed. I'm going to slide in over here.
I can feel more tension, but it's completely different than the other side. Like the touch feels good.
Yeah. I don't feel as much of what feels like restriction even from the skin, like it feels more pliable over here. It's not to make a judgment, it's just noticing what's going on. I'm going to slide around again. Up above the navel, normally there's some tension right through this line. I'm going to find a spot, maybe an inch or two above, and I'm just going to gently sink in. Allow her to breathe. A little too deep. I'm going to back off just a bit. Better there. There's not as much protection through the belly, so you allow the receiver to dictate how much pressure is used. Remember that you can go deeply, you just can't do so fast. It takes time. I'm getting a little bit of her pulse as I'm over the carotid artery. She doesn't want any more pressure than that. I'm just hanging out. She had a little gurgle, something shifting. This time, when she exhales, I'm going to slowly, at the end of her exhale, begin to back out so that when she takes an in-breath, she's able to fully expand there. Clockwise around the navel. I'm going to find a little spot to the side. Same thing. Just pressing down and in. Primarily, you think of it as just sinking through the abdomen, moving tissue around. You're having an effect on smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is not skeletal muscle. I'm pressing through skeletal muscle to get to organs. Organs are smooth muscle. She gave me a good in-breath there. She's going to exhale. It'll sink slightly. And at the end of her exhale, I'm going to slowly back out. She's asked several times for less pressure, so I'm being a little bit more gentle. Everyone's edge will be slightly different. You'll notice again that I'm about an inch, maybe two. Cardinal position, north, south, east, and west, around the navel. And she's saying again, no more pressure than that. Just hanging out. I'm going to back off just a hair. I just want her to feel respected, comfortable for the pressure that she can take. And I hang out. She breathes really well. She gives me one more good breath. And at the end of her exhale, I'm going to slowly back out. You're working rectus abdominis, abdominal muscles to get them to soften and release. As that entire sheath of muscle softens, you're able to go in and work gently, slowly, and have an effect possibly on organs. Belly work can be extremely nurturing. You just have to go slow. Even I, shooting this, have had to back off. I'm being a little more gentle on this side because she's had more issues over here. It's been a little more tender as we worked. After she gives me one more good breath, at the end of her exhale, I'm going to let it bottom out and then slowly exit so that she can breathe. Broad pressure again, long, slow strokes. You can imagine if we spent an hour and a half working through here, I'd be able to hook around the diaphragm, around the rib cage, down and around, working above the pubic bone. Lots of female clients that I see have horribly painful menstrual cramps. And when I started doing this work, they were calling me and saying they were getting crazy relief from menstrual pain, that it went to almost nothing. I think sometimes there's just tissue that's stuck. You're also having an effect on nerves through the area. Hooking around the rib cage. I'm going to hook right here, just around the diaphragm again, wraps around the base. As I got to the edge, it was just a bit too much. I just backed off. Big, broad thumb, going slow. So, going through the belly with double-handed strokes, having a conversation with Missy, this is completely common. She got to a point where I could tell she was about to cry. Now, I am a guy and I cry when people work on my belly. There's something about it that is very difficult for me to put my finger on because it's not science. I cannot explain it from a Western medical context. I'm using broad strokes because I'm trying to soften her again. I'm not trying to push her into that emotional space where she would cry from the belly work. I'm just trying to soften this a bit. Big, broad strokes. This is something that if I saw her in clinical practice, I would probably try to get her to do multiple sessions in a row over the course of weeks to try to work on some of this. I see tons of people who let go of, for lack of a better word, grief. They cry. They have sort of emotional releases about, old family members or trauma. Going through slowly, working through the belly. You can begin to finish the way that you started with a little bit of light contact. The whole time we worked, we were softening superficial tissue, working through tension. And then slowly you begin to work just a little bit more deeply, but always within the range of what the person can receive. So as you're providing quality touch, people can have emotional releases, but you're not trying to push them into those, and you're not trying to force tissue to unwind. You're trying to go slow and allow their nervous system to down-regulate and let go. Back again with broad pressure. Again, the whole time we've gone in a clockwise motion. Being completely aware of her emotional state, what's going on. I'm going to place a little bit of pressure, just a broad hand, and I'm going to slide gently up, just making contact. Once I have this big, broad pressure, I can glide just a little back and forth. Then, broad contact. I'm just going to hang out for several breaths. Broad pressure. Bit of a gurgle there, stuff moving along. If you get gurgling, that normally means that the parasympathetic nervous system is engaged. What it means is the receiver has gone out of fight or flight. The body's gone to digestion, rest, and repair. After she gives me a good exhale, after the exhale bottoms out, I'm going to gently disengage. And thank you so much for